Conservative MP Jamil Javani said Canadians are shooting ourselves in the foot with anti-American pissy fits. I think he's talking about you.
Well, something, I really don't care what he says about me because I gave him the chance. No one would even know who Jamil Javani was unless I hired the guy in my office. I didn't know him from a hole in the ground. But in saying that, I am happy that he went down in the U.S. I'm happy when I see other premiers go down to the U.S. and lobby. But no, I don't call it a hissy fit. What I call is making sure we communicate with the American people like I just did half an hour ago with the former governor, and continue advocating to our American friends that as we get closer to this Kuzma deal, that our voice is being heard in the U.S. and make sure that the administration in the U.S. understands it's going to hurt Americans. Tariff on Canada is a tax on the American people. As simple as that. They need to take the Ronald Reagan approach. You know, you can't unscramble an egg. You got to make the omelet larger. My favorite saying, especially in the auto sector.
There you have it, guys. Today is Monday, February 23rd. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. This is Canuck News. You kind of heard Doug Ford there. It kind of ties into the article that I want us to go through because it's really framing that wider picture around the USMCA that's going on. Obviously, he was talking specifically about Jamil Javani calling Canadian sentiment a hissy fit towards the tariffs. But whatever your sentiment is towards the tariffs, I know Canadians are quite hurt. They're taking it really to heart. I think we need to have a little bit more of a pragmatic approach when it comes to how we're looking at the U.S. and how we're treating these tariffs specifically. Doug Ford says we need to look at it as a wider omelet. If you can't just make scrambled eggs, you need to make a wider omelet. Sure, especially around autos. That's fine. But this same rhetoric is now leaking into the aerospace industry, right? So this is exactly where that Canadian exposure comes into play, because our industry is so tied to the U.S. and it makes sense for it to be tied to the U.S. because the U.S. is just the largest market in the world. It is. It's the largest market for private jets in the world for Bombardier as well. So when we're talking about these things and we're talking about diversifying away from the U.S., it's not that simple because the U.S. is the market that the entire world wants to sell into. So how are you going to diversify if the whole world is trying to funnel itself into the U.S. market because of purchasing power and just the amount of capital that exists there? And you're focusing outwards. And I'm not saying we don't need to focus outwards. We need to focus outwards, 100%. But the pain is much closer to home. So it's not just about let's go, partner here, partner there. If Bombardier is, for instance, specifically Bombardier now, if Bombardier is doing 75% of their business in the US and like 10% in Canada and the rest is, and 15% is the rest of the world, it doesn't make sense for Canada to go around trying to make other deals first and hedging against the U.S. when we have much closer pain to home, right? You start building diversification after you've alleviated your initial pain, guys. This is the way I really like to look at things. Transport Canada has confirmed the safety and airworthiness of 2 of 4 American-made General Dynamics Gulfstream business jets at the heart of recent threats by U.S. President Donald Trump against Canada's aerospace industry. The federal department awarded type certification to Gulfstream's G500 and G600 models on February 15th, according to a document from Transport Canada's National Aeronautical Product Approval Database. 2 other new Gulfstream models, the G700 and G800, are not listed, meaning they have yet to be approved. Ottawa has been working to diffuse U.S. anger over jet safety approvals after Mr. Trump blasted Canada in a social media post in late January for having wrongfully, illegally, and steadfastly refused to certify the 4 Gulfstream jet models. The president said the United States would decertify the Global Express jets made by Canada's Bombardier and all aircraft made in Canada until Canada approved the business jets made by Savannah-based Gulfstream. He also threatened to impose a 50% tariff 50% import tariff on Canadian aircraft sold into the US if the situation was not immediately addressed. We need to stop here because these 3 paragraphs are just fully loaded with a whole bunch of stuff. And I don't want to talk personalities, guys. I want to talk structure. So what we're seeing right now is that Bombardier is one of the last remaining high-value advanced manufacturers that are actually headquartered in Canada. We don't have too many of them. They actually build a full product. And aerospace isn't retail, guys. These are luxury items that require precise engineering. It's even more high-tech than cars, than auto manufacturing. It's highly skilled labor. The export revenues are great. And it's real technological depth that you can just start expanding from. Like, for instance, this is going to be a little minor digression. The Swedes, for the Global Hawk, obviously they're trying to push for that Gripen to be built, but they have a subplane, like a surveillance plane called the Global Hawk, and it's actually built off of a Bombardier plane. Like, they use Bombardier planes and then they add the surveillance architecture into it. So we can actually successfully turn Bombardier into a military manufacturing wing if we wanted to. That's the kind of technological depth that we have, and it would be an advanced plane. But we're not doing that for whatever reason. That's a story for a different video. And that kind of industrial those industrial capabilities are rare, guys. You don't come across that too often, and especially in avionics, like the aerospace industry, it's the higher generation you go into, the smaller the higher obviously the competition. But there's a lot smaller players in the space, and we can be a part of that if we so choose to. But because this is commercial, and the U.S. is our largest business jet, is just in general, the largest business jet market in the world, and access to the U.S. certification, guys, this is not optional. We need to have it. It is existential, quite literally, for Bombardier. And if the U.S. executive branch can actually threaten to decertify all aircraft made in Canada, it's telling us, guys, something completely fundamental. That the Canadian aerospace capacity depends on reciprocal regulatory recognition from a larger partner. We can't actually do this, have Bombardier be the success that it is without the US. And this isn't ideological, guys. It's just math. We sell the majority of our planes to the US. We sell drastically more planes in the US than we do in Canada and the rest of the world. So when your primary export market, guys, can actually suspend access like that, your whole industrial base operates under their wing. And that, I mean, Bombardier in this article specifically is being targeted, but that's a wider picture. It exists. It works for almost every Canadian industry that exists. Linamar, for instance, or Magna, who are they selling specialized automobile parts to? Who are they selling those specialized automobile parts to? Canada doesn't have its own Canadian auto make. We don't. Why don't we? We don't. They're all being sold in the US. And so this, not only does it affect how, like, our technological depth, it actually it affects all of the suppliers in Quebec and Ontario, all of these skilled labor jobs, these trades, the actual capital that goes into everything. So it's an investor's nightmare to see this kind of political volatility exist in such a key industry, because honestly, when that kind of volatility rises, capital it just hesitates. Capital doesn't want to go where there's political volatility. That's why we've seen all of these FDIs in previous videos that I've done, like for instance from the Arab states or from Southeast Asia. They're waiting to see what's going to happen with the USMCA before they actually invest in Canada, because everybody wants a slice of the American market, right? And that manufacturing employment, it's already falling in a bunch of key industries like the automobile industry. And when certification becomes leverage, guys, those risk premiums just start rising. And sovereignty begins with acknowledging how exposed we actually are. The declaration sparked alarm and confusion among aviation sector leaders in both Canada and the US, with some commentators saying Mr. Trump was using his power to undermine the safety functions of regulators. The head of the US Federal Aviation Administration said earlier this month that his Canadian counterparts were poised to approve the certification of American-made Gulfstream aircraft. Bombardier and Gulfstream are major competitors in the luxury jet market, each boasting a healthy backlog of orders stemming from strong demand for their products worldwide. Bombardier's flagship product is the Global 8000, which it says is the fastest civilian aircraft since the Concorde. Got to stop right here because we got to unpack this a little. Is that there's a backlog for both the Gulfstream and the Bombardier planes for international sales. Now, obviously, the U.S. is considered international in Canadian terms, but this is the harder question. We've spent the past year, guys, signaling all of this firmness across multiple trade disputes, but at the same time, the economic reality is increasingly uncomfortable. Our manufacturing employment has just been dropping sharply. Our industrial confidence it's never been more fragile. And the loonie is reflecting that vulnerability. Our loonie sucks right now. It's a catastrophe. You don't want to travel anywhere because you're just gonna get the worst rates. And so almost the significant portion of Canada's foreign direct investments remain completely underwritten by that access to the U.S. market, guys. Diversification is rational, guys, and we want to seek new partners, and we want to reduce that dependence on the U.S. But diversification in and of itself, guys, this isn't going to create leverage for us unless it changes our bargaining power. And the U.S., if the U.S. remains that anchor market that prices Canadian investment and absorbs all of those high-value exports, then posture without leverage, guys, is just going to invite more pressure. And the U.S. will always be our main market because it's the largest market in the world. And we depend on our national defense for them as well. So it's not about being submissive, guys. It's about sequencing. We need to do things in order of priority. And if Canada's negotiating structural dependence while signaling defiance, guys, the larger partner, they're going to test those limits, right? We knew Trump was coming. We knew how he would act because he acted like this the last time as well. Guys, sovereignty is not measured by tone. It is measured by how much economic pain you can absorb without bending. That is key, guys. And just to tie into a different part now, because this is really where everything becomes a bit institutional. If Transport Canada accelerated that certification because of political pressure from Washington, then regulatory independence has been completely compromised, guys. And if that certification timing was purely technical and unrelated to threats, then the U.S. executive branch has signaled a willingness to weaponize aviation safety for trade leverage. Either one of those scenarios are representing a serious shift, guys. And the North American economic integration was completely built on predictable regulatory reciprocity, guys. If certification, infrastructure, or market access can be openly threatened as instruments of leverage, then that predictability just weakens. And predictability is the foundation of integrated economies, guys. Sovereignty is not about flag waving, guys. It is about whether your institutions operate without an external veto. Guys, and that regulatory processes, if they just become these bargaining chips, then all of that institutional independence that we're touting is just going to become conditional. And this is that risk that we're running into. And really why this matters to Canadians is, I tried to purposely not make this episode about Trump. It doesn't need to be about partisan politics. It's about capacity. Canada cannot achieve sovereignty through speeches or symbolic diversification, nor can it secure sovereignty through quiet accommodation alone, guys. We need, in my opinion, we need two tracks. First, guys, we need immediate economic stabilization. We need to protect our industrial capacity. We need to lower that escalation risk during these critical negotiations, and we need to secure predictable trade terms while exposure remains high. The second thing I believe we need to do is that we need to start building generational capacity. We need to make like a 100-year plan, build sectors where Canada is going to be indispensable, strengthen domestic capital formation, Build a Canadian sovereign wealth fund. Treat infrastructure, supply chains, and advanced manufacturing, guys, as strategic assets as they are, and create that cross-party continuity in economic security that can actually survive any election. We need that kind of unity. We need that kind of plan. Because if we remain structurally dependent, we must always negotiate from realism, guys. And if we seek independence, we must build leverage. Sovereignty, guys, is not declared, it is earned. That's all I have for you guys today. Hope you liked today's episode. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and like Captain say, ay, kick your ass all hockey season, ay, ay. Now teach me riding horses, ay.